Hello, today I'm going to be presenting on the study of bystander intervention in emergencies, diffusion of responsibility. This study discusses the bystander effect and tries to prove some factual information about the phenomenon. The specific item the experiment wishes to discuss is the diffusion of responsibility. What prompted this experiment was an event where a stabbing was witnessed by 38 people. These 38 people did not do anything to prevent or report the stabbing, they were unable to communicate with each other, and people were wondering why this happened. The media was discussing how this proves society is decaying, and so on. The study looked to prove that this had nothing to do with society, but rather that the response were just a part of human nature. People are afraid of getting involved in these things because of what may happen to them. They may get stabbed as well, or just put into danger. This prompted the experiment where the researchers looked out to prove that the more people witnessing the event, the more diffused the responsibility was, and thus less likely that people are able to report the incident. People would think that they had to do less because someone else would already be reporting it. To test this, researchers got psychology students to test by saying it was required by the class, similar to us. These students would enter a building which would be a long hallway with multiple small rooms. An assistant would help them to the room the subject would be in. The subject was then given a headset and was told to wait for instructions. The researcher would explain the process of talking to these other people through the headset, but would not listen in during it, so the researcher cannot be one of the people listening in. The student thought he was talking to either one other person, two other people, or five other people about college problems. One of the people they would talk to would have a seizure at some point, and the subject would respond in some way to the seizure. The speed in which the student left the room to let the assistant know about the seizure relative to the amount of people the subject was talking with was being tested. If the subject did not respond within 6 minutes of the seizure starting, the experiment would be terminated. After the experiment ended, the researchers told the subject about the nature of the test. They would vary the background information of the people who would be randomly assigned to the experiment. The order in which they spoke started with the man who would have the seizure, to the random people in between, to the subject, and then it would go back to the man who had the seizure, and then at this time he would have a seizure, he'd start speaking unhealthily, shakily, seemingly in danger to the subject, and this is when the timer would start. The subject would then have 6 minutes to respond, as mentioned before, and if he did not respond in 6 minutes, as mentioned before, the experiment would end. And then the assistant would tell them that the experiment was this, and then they'd take a survey about the thoughts they had about the experiment, which they'd just check a box if they had a thought, and what they thought about the experiment. So this led to the results, which showed a very strong connection between the amount of people and the time to respond to the person having the seizure. When the subject was one-on-one with the victim, 85% of them reported it, 62% reported it in the group of 3, and then 31% reported it in the group of 6. Along with the percent of people reporting the issue, the speed of response was tested. In the one-on-one group, it took the subjects 52 seconds to respond on average. In the consecutive groups, it took longer for the 3-person group and even longer for the 6-person group. This data showed that the amount of people witnessing the situation affected the speed and quantity of reports to the assistant. The larger the group, the more people that would report the seizure in a longer amount of time. This would go to show why society was not decaying, like the media was saying, due to the 38 people not reporting the stabbing. This was, in fact, human nature because the responsibility gets diffused to everybody in the group, and thus everybody in the group individually is less likely to respond to this event. The background information that was provided by the subjects proved to be useless. The background of the subject, composition of the group witnessing the event did not change the response in any statistically significant way. Even when the pre-medical student was in the group with the subject, the response did not change. Then the questionnaire after the experiment was to see what the subject was thinking during the experiment. A lot of possible thoughts were put on a sheet, and the subject was to check any thought that they had. Most of the subject checked very few boxes. This could be due to the subject biasing the data because it did not want to share any negative thoughts now that they know the true nature of the experiment. They also could have forgotten what thoughts they had during the experiment because of the high-stress situation they were in. It was ultimately decided that the low amount of thoughts that were checked was due to the panic nature of most subjects. In the situation, it would be very hard to have any coherent thoughts, let alone remembering those thoughts after the fact.